Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching this channel on YouTube or on Rumble. Today, I have a lot to say again, just like yesterday. Therefore, I am alone in order to elaborate on what's happening, especially in Gaza in regards to the ceasefire agreement and also the UN report that accused Israel of committing heinous crimes, inhumane acts in the Gaza Strip, in addition to a report that debunks the Israeli claims that on October the 7th, there has been a systematic rape and sexual violence by the militants who attacked on the Israeli settlements from the Gaza Strip. We're going to shed light on these issues. However, before I do that, I need your advice and I need your opinion. I received an email from someone who says that he works for a company and he represents the company called Apects, APECTS. And there is the website, apects.com. The website exists. And he is offering me a cooperation that they would like me to play a 30-second to 60-second video in every live stream trying to promote a product, and this product is called Cyber Ghost VPN. Now, the problem with the email is that once I receive the email, it's on my Gmail account. The Gmail has marked the email as dangerous and says this message seems dangerous. Similar messages were used to steal people's personal information. Avoid clicking links, downloading attachments, or replying with personal information. This email, however, has no links in it except for the website, apex.com. There is no attachments that I can download, and I'm not going to reply them anyways with personal information. Now, I'm going to copy and paste the website in the live chat now. And it says apex.com, and you can check it yourself. I don't know much about this company. If you can, guys, please write a comment when this live streaming is over so that I can see the comments under the video, and let me know your opinion. Is this a fishy company? Is this fake? What is it about? If okay, don't do anything but report it ASAP. Kevork, some people say don't do it. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I don't know what is this website about. And there is an insistence from the company, and they sent me another email the second day. So what do you think about this cooperation, etc., etc.? I put the link in the live chat. It's apex.com. You can check it yourself and let me know after the live streaming. The second thing, tomorrow, it's Thursday, I'm going to be on the Duran at 12 p.m., so noontime, Central European time. It's going to be 11 a.m. London time and 1 p.m. Damascus time and 6 a.m. in the morning Eastern American time. So I'm very excited about that. We are definitely going to speak about what's happening in West Asia or the Middle East, Syria, Gaza, and also, if we have time, we're going to touch on the topic of Armenia. So those are all important cases, in my opinion. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited about that, and I'm going to replay this video tomorrow during our live streaming during the usual time. Now, the topic of today's live streaming is about what's happening in Gaza. And as you may know, guys, the UN just published a report, and they say that more grave violations against children were committed in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel than anywhere else in the world last year, according to a UN report due to be published this week. The report on children and armed conflict verified more cases of war crimes against children in the occupied territories and Israel than anywhere else, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Somalia, Nigeria, and Sudan. So Israeli armed forces, the occupation forces, have committed more war crimes against children in the occupied territories, which means in Gaza and the West Bank, and also in the Israeli territories against the Palestinian children than anywhere else in the world, including the places where there are grave violations of human rights and war and destruction and ethnic cleansing and genocide, such as in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Somalia, Nigeria, and Sudan, all these countries together. So the annual assessment, due to be presented to the UN General Assembly later this week by the Secretary General Antonio Guterres, lists Israel for the first time in an annex of state offenders responsible for violations of children's rights, triggering outrage from the Israeli government. So there is a list of countries that the UN has and prepares every year, and they say that these countries are responsible for the gross violation against children's rights. So they are a shame list, basically, belonging to the UN. And this has triggered lots of outrage in the Israeli government. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, he issued a statement that the UN had, quote, added itself to the blacklist of history when it joined those who support the Hamas murderers. He hasn't accused the UN yet of anti-Semitism. I mean, he did it multiple times, but this time he only said that the UN added itself to the blacklist of history when it joined those who support the Hamas murderers. The report details only cases that UN investigators were able to verify, so it accounts for just part of the total number of deaths and injuries of children in the course of last year. In all, the UN verified 8,009 grave violations against 4,360 children in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, more than twice the figure in the Democratic or the DRC, I think it's the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. So Israel has committed double the crimes that have been committed or which have been committed in Congo during the last year, twice, right? Of total number of child victims verified, 4,247 were Palestinian and 113 were Israeli. So if we compare the numbers now between how many violations Israel or how many crimes Israel committed against children compared to the Palestinian factions, so we have 5,698 violations were attributed to Israeli armed forces and security forces. In exchange, or on the other side, Hamas has committed 116. So Hamas has committed 116 violations against human rights violations against children, 116, in comparison to 5,698 committed by the Israeli security forces. Now, Israeli settlers, those who are radical Zionists who carry arms and they are protected by the Israeli police, especially in the West Bank, the Palestinian territory, they were responsible for 51 cases, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, on the other hand, were involved in 21. So the numbers speak volume. Now, this was a report by The Guardian, and they were quoting this report by the UN. But there was something very important in the UN report that The Guardian didn't mention in this article, and that is Israel has committed sexual crimes in against the Palestinians. And this was something that has been attributed or claimed that Hamas and the other Palestinian militants have committed systematic rape, sexual violence against women and children in the kibbutzes that they have attacked. However, this report says that the Commission of Inquiry, which is belonging to the UN, they say that during their investigation, they found that Israeli authorities are responsible for the war crimes of starvation as a method of warfare, murder or willful killing, intentionally directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects, forcible transfer, sexual violence, torture, and inhumane or cruel treatment, arbitrary detention, and outrage upon personal dignity. If I want to repeat these crimes, we have the crime of starvation as a method of warfare. We have the crime of murder or willful killing. We have the crime of intentionally directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects. We have the crime of forcible transfer. We have the crime of sexual violence. We have the crime of torture. And we have the crime of inhumane or cruel treatment, arbitrary detention, and outrages upon personal dignity. 9 cruel, inhumane crimes committed by the Israeli side, including sexual violence, which was something that the Israeli government has been saying and claiming and accusing its adversaries in Gaza uh, uh, that they have committed these crimes on the October 7 attacks. Now, if we check the report, there is these yellow highlights that you can see and in the report, that women were forced to remove so Palestinian women were forced to remove their clothes and or walk in underwear for prolonged periods of time in front of their family and community members during evacuations in the Gaza Strip. Also, women and girls, after being forced to remove their clothes in public, were sexually harassed by soldiers in front of their family and community. The Commission particularly notes that female victims were forced to strip down to their underwear and remove their veils in public and in front of the community that has strict religious and cultural dress codes, particularly for women and girls. In one case, the surrounding men were made to watch the stripping and harassment of female members of the community. The Commission has not seen any evidence that the Israeli authorities took any measures to prevent or stop acts of sexual violence or to identify and punish the perpetrators. The humiliating and degrading treatment continued systematically during the military operations in Gaza Strip and affected hundreds of men. The interviewee described how a female Israeli soldier ordered 2 teenage boys who had been stripped to their underwear to dance and recorded a video of them while she was laughing. Wow. At a makeshift checkpoint, women, men, girls, and boys were all asked to undress at gunpoint, create a ball with their clothes, and throw their clothes to the Israeli security forces. They were told to hold their identity documents high in the air and continue walking while undressed. Israeli security forces said that anyone who didn't follow orders would be shot. The men were completely naked while walking, and the women were in their underwear. I don't know how the Israeli side will try to now refute these allegations against them, especially that they have been speaking about the same crimes and attributing it to their adversaries and saying that their adversaries are animals and they have treated the Israeli woman with not only disrespect but degraded their dignity. They have committed sexual violence and systematic rape. Right, those are the allegations by the Israeli side. But we have a UN report claiming that this has been committed by the Israeli side and systematically in the Gaza Strip and also in the West Bank. So what the UN basically did this week, they added Israel to a black list of countries, saying that these countries harming children in conflict zones. The UN has added Israel to the so-called blacklist of countries that have committed abuses against children in armed conflict. An Israeli diplomat has confirmed, as thousands of Palestinian children have been killed in the Israeli military's continued assault on the Gaza Strip. In a social media post on Friday, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, said he received official notification of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' decision. And he was very outraged, and he said, "This is simply outrageous and wrong." He posted the video on his X account, and he said, "I responded to the shameful decision and said that our army is the most moral army in the world. The only one being blacklisted is the Secretary General who incentivizes and encourages terrorism and is motivated by hatred towards Israel." Take a look what the Israeli special envoy or permanent envoy to the UN had to say to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and he recorded himself apparently in the office and posted it on his X account.
"I am utterly shocked and disgusted by this shameful decision of the Secretary General. Israel's army is the most moral army in the world. So this immoral decision will only aid the terrorists and reward Hamas. And I have to tell you another thing. The only one who is blacklisted today is the Secretary General, whose decisions since the war started and even before are rewarding terrorists and incentivizing them to use children for terror acts. And now Hamas will continue even more to use schools and hospitals, because this decision, shameful decision of the Secretary General, will only give Hamas hope to survive and will only extend the war and extend the suffering. Shame on him.
I truly wonder if he was really talking to someone or he was just recording himself to post it on social media platforms. And when I watched this video, it reminded me of an Arabic saying that says in Arabic, "أسمع كلامك أصدقك أشوف أفعالك أستغرب." And if I want to translate it literally, it says, "I hear your words, and when I believe you when I hear your words, but I'm surprised when I see your actions." Like there's a big contradiction between your words and your actions, and you do not need really an expert to see that and to determine and to realize that the Israeli occupation forces are committing heinous crimes in the Gaza Strip, and they're carpet bombing complete entire residential neighborhoods. They have destroyed every single university in the Gaza Strip. They have destroyed most of the health sector in the Gaza Strip. They have destroyed the electricity. They have destroyed the water dams, the water extractors and the generators and everything. It is just hell on earth, right? Like you do not need to be really genius to realize what the Israeli side is doing there. But apparently, they still think in Israel that they can somehow convince more people that they are the most moral army in the world. And I truly believe that in June 2024, there are not so many people who believe this. There are people who know that Israel is committing these war crimes, and despite that, they support Israel for ideological reasons or for some their beliefs. Some of them are paid, some of them are just ideologues, some of them are completely brainwashed. But really, if there is anyone who's thinking in a very in a simple, critical way, at least they will say, "I don't support Israel. I don't support the Palestinians. Probably, I just don't want to give support to Israeli crimes," right? But they don't do that. They don't do that. Most of the people who support Israel, in my opinion, nowadays are either hardcore ideologues, and they will continue supporting Israel, whatever they do for against the Palestinians. And you have some of the paid shields, and there are many, many are paid, by the way. I just want to thank the Iranian Putin, who for gifting or he becoming a member for 2 months. I really appreciate it, and this is another proof that I am paid by not only Putin but the Iranian Putin. So thank you so much, my friend, for becoming a premium member of Syriana Analysis. This type of memberships and support that you give enables me to continue and continue like doing and creating content that is educational and also eye-opening to the people. And I really try to be as objective as possible, although I don't identify myself as an objective. I have my opinions, I have my biases, but what I do basically on this channel, that I would never lie to you. Right? I would never lie to you, and I would never try to manipulate you. I would just try to give you my opinion and also keep it for you to judge if what I'm saying is correct or not. But while we watch this video of the special envoy or the permanent envoy of Israel to the UN, it also reminded me that a few weeks ago, I think this was in May 2024, when the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly voted in favor of recognizing the state of Palestine, or giving it the full rights of a state in the UN. The Israeli permanent envoy to the UN, he had another circus, and he made another circus for us to laugh.
This is you are shredding the UN Charter with your own hands. Yes, yes, that's what you're doing. Shredding the UN Charter. Shame on you.
You know, when Syria was under existential threat after 2011, and the permanent envoy of Syria to the UN was Bashar Jafari. If you don't know, guys, just Google him. His name is Dr. Bashar Jafari. And with like very objectively, he was one of the best diplomats that Syria had. And I truly believe that he is the best diplomat that Syria has, and he could become a very good foreign minister in the future. He is now Syria's ambassador to Russia, and he pursued the interest of Syria in the best way possible. Right? Of course, there were so many discussions, arguments, let's say verbal fights with the American envoy, with the Qatari envoy, with the Saudi envoy, with all the countries that tried to overthrow the government in Syria. But all in all, he always kept his posture. He was professional and he was talking in a very eloquent way. He was speaking different languages: English, French, Arabic, and I think he speaks like 5 languages. But when I see now this permanent envoy of Israel to the UN, it really raises the question: doesn't Israel have a better diplomat to the UN? Is this one of the many myths that I personally believe that Israel enjoys? Like, for example, the best army in the Middle East, the invincible army. For example, that they have the most best geniuses governing their coalition in the government, in the Ministry of Defense, in the intelligence, it's in the diplomatic sector. Like this type of examples, it really shows that they are not really that competent that I used to believe. And this is something that they had this military deterrence, that everybody was afraid of Israel because they could destroy you. But at the same time, also the general public believed that they are very smart. And these types of examples show that they're not that smart. And what they're doing basically is bringing shame to their country. And it shows how desperate they are during such times, especially that they are faced with an existential threat too. And I've been trying doing my research about this case because I wanted to see what's happening, also what happened with this ambassador. I came with to a clip by Jeffrey Sachs on Judge Napolitano, and he had brilliant words to say about him. Take a look.
Well, it was a rant more than a speech, and it ended up with the Israeli ambassador putting the UN charter through a shredder that he brought up to the podium, claiming that by voting for Palestine's membership in the UN, the General Assembly was shredding the UN charter. It was disgusting and disgraceful. And my first impression was that it was a kind of deranged mind. But when I thought about it more, and especially when I read the Twitter feed of this ambassador Gilad Erdan, it was obviously carefully thought out. He came with his props, and it wasn't a rant. It was an appeal to the extremists in Israel. He was basically showboating and taking a video selfie for his ex-followers. And it's a sign of how bad the political scene is. It obviously, if it swayed any votes at all in the General Assembly, it was to increase the vote for the state of Palestine. I'm a strong supporter.
One of our friends says, just want to know, where did he buy that mini shredder? I also was asking myself this question. I will check today online if I can find something, and then we start shredding some of the papers here. Anyways, it's a really clown show by him, right? Like it doesn't. We say it's like hype in Arabic. It's like you're representing your country in the UN, and your approach, and especially that the UN has created Israel. Like the decision to divide Palestine in 1947 was made by the UN. So at least the Israelis should know, and especially if you're a diplomat and you know the history of your country, that this was the UN, the same UN and the same UN charter that has given Israel the legitimacy. Because until the decision of the UN, the Palestine was under the British mandate, and then they divided the country into 2 parts or 3 parts. First, they made a country for the Jewish people and the Palestinians, and there was the Jerusalem under international control. So, if anything, they should thank the UN for creating them a state. And he's putting the UN Charter in this in the shredder in this funny way. Guys, we are talking about really gross violations of human rights, and we now have a UN report backing the claims that Israeli occupation forces have committed gross violations of human rights against the Palestinians, including sexual violence, right? But the Palestinians were also accused of the same thing. So what does the report say about this? And this is, by the way, an X page that if you guys are on X and if you want me to tell you what is the top 5 accounts on X, I would definitely say and tell you to go and follow this X account. Handler is Zay Squirrel, so you can see it on the screen. This is one of the best X accounts that I have came across, very educational and keeps posting interesting political and investigative stuff on his or her profile. So he says, the UN just released its first actual investigation into October 7 and ongoing Gaza genocide by Israel. It concludes that though there was violence against women, there is no proof of any rape, let alone mass rape, or that it was ordered by Hamas. So this is a screenshot from the report. The commission has reviewed testimonies obtained by journalists and the Israeli police concerning rape, but has not been able to independently verify such allegations due to a lack of access to victims, witnesses, and crime sites, and the obstruction of its investigations by the Israeli authorities. The commission was unable to review the unedited version of such testimonies. For the same reasons, the commission was also unable to verify reports of sexualized torture and genital mutilation. Additionally, the commission found some specific allegations to be false, inaccurate, or contradictory with other evidence or statements and discounted this from its assessment. The commission didn't find credible evidence, however, that militants received orders to commit sexual violence, and so it was unable to make conclusions on this issue. Very interesting, actually. So, the investigation by the UN's Human Rights Office also concludes the Israeli regime does actually engage in a systematic campaign of sexual and gender violence against Palestinian children, women, and men, rooted in the very nature of the occupation and can only end with it. So those are the paragraphs. I mean, you can go also read the report yourself, guys, but this account has already made a big service for us to understand what happened, what is included in this report. So the UN Human Rights Office, unlike Pramila Patern's office, actually does have an investigatory mandate and abilities, and this is their conclusion from their investigation. The New York Times, Association Press, Reuters, Guardian all lied, and even Patton had concluded the same. So here is the link of the commission of this investigation. He says, read the Human Rights Commission report in full. There is only one mention of rape, saying there is no evidence for it, and zero mention of knives, nails in vaginas, and genital mutilation. It was all genocidal propaganda hoax from start to finish. Now, what will the media class do with this first actual UN report? He asks. Let me predict it for you. If they report on these conclusions at all, they will lie and claim that the references to sexual and gender violence proves their mass rape hoax, when it explicitly debunks it in its only mention of rape. The use of sexual violence refers to any violence they believe was targeted against women, not referring to rape, sexualized torture, or genital mutilation, which it again explicitly only mentions once in paragraph 26, he highlighted. But here is the problem for them. If they go with that obviously and intentionally deceitful reading of the report's use of sexual violence, then it means they also have to accept that it was not ordered by Hamas as a systematic weapon of war, which is what the New York Times, BBC, Reuters, Association Press, and Guardian falsely claimed. Whereas in the Israeli regime case, it is actually systematic. It's part of their operating procedures written in the report. So the actual mass rape in that case would not be done by Hamas on October 7, as the New York Times and all the others claimed, but by their precious genocidal Israeli regime, and not just since in the ongoing Gaza genocide, but stretching back to the entire history of the occupation. But of course, they will ignore the term's usage in that context and simply lie about it to launder their genocidal mass rape hoax, exactly like they did with the Patton report, which finally months later the Times of London came out as the first mainstream media publication to accurately report on, while also confirming it with her directly. Now watch and see how accurate my prediction is. I know these scumbags in and out. I know exactly what they are right now writing and putting as their headlines to put on their front pages. Breaking: UN Human Rights Commission finds mass sexual violence on October 7. This is the lie they will all go with. Just watch. I truly believe that this is the case and this is what they're going to do. Just excuse me, I have to drink water. There are a few pages on X that I highly recommend, and his page is really very informative, very educational. I learned from it too, so you should also do. So we have now covered the UN report, which proves and declaims that the Israeli side has committed heinous crimes against humanity, war crimes, sexual violence, and nine types of crimes in the Gaza Strip against Palestinian men, women, and children. This is now documented in the UN report. And on the other hand, we have the report saying that there was no mass rape, there was no genital mutilation, and this systematic sexual violence during the October 7 attack. There is no evidence for that. And there were many people trying to already verify, let's say, these claims. Some of which came from Electronic Intifada, which they did an amazing job, and some of which came also by Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and others, brilliant journalists who debunked this. And it's not like when I say debunk, it's just like they came and said something. No, they provided solid evidence that you can build up your mind and say, no, this was atrocity propaganda. And what the Israelis have done in this case, they have created a narrative which is factually inaccurate, but they are able to sell this narrative because they have strong, let's say, influence over the press, over the journalists. And if you don't get along with that narrative, you're a Hamas sympathizer, you're a terrorist sympathizer, you're an anti-Semite. So many people who also learned that this is, or they realized this is an atrocity propaganda, they were afraid to speak up their mind because they would be accused of anti-Semitism. They could lose their job. They could be called a Hamas sympathizer, right? Or rapist, or you're encouraging rape, etc., etc. So they really, they did a lot. Now this report is going to be really painful for them, but at the same time, as the owner of this X account says, the mainstream media, it's just a lost case. Like, just don't turn on your TV and watch mainstream media, and just don't read Association Press and all this BBC and this BS websites. What they do basically is a narrative control, right? They're trying to keep the narrative under control, and they're trying to, sometimes they criticize Israel, but they decide how much, and they choose the limit of the criticism. So the people would also be trained and engineered to criticize Israel in a certain extent, right? They don't go beyond the limit. This is what they do, and they will do it. They will do it again and again and again until Israel finishes everything. This is their job. They are covering up the crimes of the Israeli occupation forces. So better, guys, like really just put it in the first the bin, mainstream media. We have now this report. We covered it, and we have the ceasefire talks brokered by or mediated. I don't know if we can call it a mediation. United States, we have Qatar, we have, I think, Turkey, and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He arrived in Doha for talks on a potential UN-backed ceasefire agreement, and it is a very, very controversial case because Israeli side is accusing the American side is accusing Hamas of not accepting the ceasefire deal. Although Israel has rejected for now, I believe, between 7 to 9 ceasefire proposals, but they're accusing Hamas that they are not accepting the ceasefire agreement, and this is the American special envoy or the permanent envoy to the UN, Linda Thomas. She says, today the UN Security Council sent a clear message to Hamas, accept the ceasefire hostage deal on the table. Israel has already accepted it, she says, this deal. The fighting could not stop today. The fighting could stop today, and hostages could come home today if Hamas agreed to the deal. And similarly, Anthony Blinken jumped, and AIPAC, of course, is quoting him here. He says, everyone has said yes, except for Hamas. And if Hamas doesn't say yes, then this is clearly on them in terms of a vote to continue the war, not end it. However, really, like sometimes I feel like the American officials lie every time they breathe. Like every time they open their mouths, they lie. And this is just coming from the mouth of the horse, Netanyahu. Netanyahu says he won't halt Gaza war, disputes Biden's ceasefire proposal. And this was just a few days ago. And he says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he is not ready to stop the ongoing war on the Gaza Strip, claiming that President Joe Biden's remarks about a ceasefire proposal were inaccurate. I'm not ready to stop the war, he says. He told to the public broadcaster Khan. And he claimed that the details of the ceasefire proposal laid out by Biden were inaccurate. The outline that Biden presented is partial. The war will be stopped for the purpose of returning hostages, and then we will have a discussion, he said. There are other undisclosed details. We could cease fighting for 42 days to facilitate the return of hostages, but we will not give up our goal of complete victory. So, you judge, guys. On this case, you really judge. You tell me if you are going to believe the American side or the Israeli side in this case. But we have one of the Hamas members who lives in, or let's say politicians who lives in Beirut. He was on Al Mayadeen regional TV, and his name is Usama Hamdan. And he said, we do not expect Israel's acceptance of the UN ceasefire proposal because Israel cannot be trusted and only submits when it feels that it is unable to achieve victory. The resistance fronts are uniting towards one goal. Its outcome, as Sayyid Nasrallah said, will be victory. So we're covering both sides, what Netanyahu said, and now we're going to see what Hamas had to say in this case. Take a look. It is translated into English.
لا نراهن على قبول الإسرائيلي برضا. نحن ندرك أن الإسرائيلي على مدى 75 عام يريد أن يتخلص من الشعب الفلسطيني. أنا أذكر أن رابين قبل أكثر من 30 سنة قال أنه يتمنى أن ينام فيستيقظ يجد غزة قد ابتلعها البحر. نحن نتذكر أن مخطط ترحيل الفلسطينيين الذي حصل عام 48 وأدى إلى تدمير 500 قرية وبلدة فلسطينية ارتكب آنذاك بحق أكثر من 80% من الشعب الفلسطيني في الأرض المحتلة عام 48. هذه هي إسرائيل. إسرائيل لا تفهم إلا لغة واحدة، لغة القوة. إذا وجدت صبرا وصمودا وقوة عند ذلك تضطر للتراجع وللتنازل. نحن سمعنا من الوسطاء كلاما إيجابيا عندما قدمت الورقة الأولى في مطلع الشهر الماضي وقبلناها، وقالوا أن هذه الورقة تحظى بضمانة الرئيس الأمريكي والرئيس المصري ودعمهما. ثم بعد ذلك اجتاح الإسرائيلي محور فيلادلفيا وتجاوز حتى اتفاقية كامب ديفيد واعتدى على الأراضي المصرية وأطلق النار على الجيش المصري وقتل جنودا وضباطا مصريين. بمعنى أنه الإسرائيلي لا يمكن أن تثق به. الإسرائيلي يخضع نتيجة شعورها أنه لا يمكن أن ينتصر عليك.
So, I mean, he is factually correct. Last month, Hamas agreed to a ceasefire agreement and Israel rejected it, and they invaded Rafah, and they occupied the Philadelphia line, which is the borderline between Egypt and Gaza Strip, and they killed, I think, 2 Egyptian soldiers there, right? It happened. So I'm not endorsing everything he says, but this is factually correct, the thing that he said about Israel rejecting the ceasefire agreement. And I think Hamas is now interested also in a ceasefire agreement. Let's see. Let's see what is going to happen. If you're going to ask me, I don't think that there is going to be a long-term ceasefire agreement. I think that the Israelis may use any sort of ceasefire agreement to free some of the hostages, to ease the tensions, the domestic tensions, and the opposition to the Netanyahu government and the protests and the there is a mounting pressure on Netanyahu from the families of the hostages. But he will just use this opportunity to free some of them, and then he will want to continue the military operation again against Gaza. So this has to be, there has to be some guarantors in this case, and the only guarantor, in my opinion, that can stop or force this ceasefire agreement for a long time on Israel is the United States. So Hamas will, in my opinion, will ask the Egyptian side or the Qatari side to bring some assurances, guarantees from the American side that this ceasefire agreement will be implemented and it will be long term. But do you really trust the United States? This is another question, right? The Americans themselves, they have evaded many of the agreements that they signed on. It's a really, really difficult, the least to say, situation for everyone there. If you stop the war, if you don't stop the war, all the scenarios are really bleak. And the Israelis have involved themselves in a vicious circle of endless violence, and they cannot see themselves solving anything but with violence in this case, right? So I rule out that there might be a long-term ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip. I truly believe that the ultimate goal of the Israeli government is ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, and to do that, they will do everything they can in their everything in their capacity. And otherwise, if the Palestinians, the 2 million Palestinians, stay in Gaza and there is going to be a two-state solution, then the Israelis reject the two-state solution. And if there is going to be one-state solution, it's still a big dilemma for the Israeli side, because then the Palestinians, ethnically speaking or population-wise, they're going to be of a higher percentage than the Jewish people. And in any democratic vote, then a Palestinian prime minister could come to power, right? They don't want that. They don't believe that the Palestinians have the right, equal rights. They believe that the Palestinians are less of them, and the Palestinians are human animals, and the Palestinians only deserve to be killed or expelled. This is, I'm just quoting them. I'm not bringing anything. It's not like an analysis, right? This is very, very important, in my opinion, to shed light on what happened during these ceasefire negotiations. But before Antony Blinken traveled to Qatar for these talks, he had some hilarious statement to make, and I'm going to show you what he had to say, because it's really laughable, and it could make your day. Like, you will really feel sassy and probably mocking him after it. Take a look.
And of course, what separates Israel, the United States, and other democracies when it comes to incredibly difficult situations like this is our respect for international law and, as appropriate, the laws of war. So we know that Israel will take all of the precautions that it can, just as we would. And again, that's what separates us from Hamas.
You know what bothers me about this video? It bothers me because he insists on treating us like we are stupid, you know? He insists on treating us like we are some sort of sheeple, you know, like we cannot read, we cannot listen, we cannot hear, we cannot see, we cannot investigate, we cannot come up with our own opinions, we cannot have a critical thinking. He really treats us like we are stupid and retarded, let's say, mentally retarded. We cannot do our own research and our homework and see what's happening there. He really thinks that we're going to believe this statement. Like, what separates the United States and Israel, because they're democracies, from the rest of the world, is that they respect international law, right? And he says it with a poker face, like with a straight face, when International Criminal Court, ICC, and the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, they both ruled that Israel is actually committing war crimes and crimes against humanity, and there is a plausible case of a genocide against Israel, right? But you know what I love about Trump, right? He's honest. He's not bullshitting us like Blinken, like, like democracy, human rights, and international law, rules-based order, blah, blah, blah. I like Trump because he's honest. He's telling us why the US occupation forces are in Syria. We are there to keep the oil. Okay, we understand you. At least we know how to deal with you, You're not fooling us. And when it comes to Israel, he just made a new statement why the Americans are in the Middle East. I mean, the Americans do not need the oil now of the Middle East because they are producing lots of this oil. They are exporters of oil. Maybe 2-3 decades ago, they needed the oil of the Middle East, but they don't need it anymore. So why are they in the Middle East? Take a look what Trump had to say.
Because the fact is, we don't have to be in the Middle East other than we want to protect Israel. We've been very good to Israel. But other than that, we don't have to be in the Middle East. We don't need, there was a time we needed desperately, or we don't need that anymore. We have more than they do. Isn't that nice?
Take a look again, really.
Because the fact is, we don't have to be in the Middle East other than we want to protect Israel. We've been very good to Israel. But other than that, we don't have to be in the Middle East. We don't need, there was a time we needed desperately, or we don't need that anymore. We have more than they do. Isn't that nice?
One of the commentators say, I respectfully disagree, Kevork. They know they cannot fool us. They say these things to fool the rest, the 90% of sheeple. The propaganda is for them, and they say it because it works. I mean, maybe this is the case in the United States. Those who support Israel blindly, maybe this type of talk is directed at them. So maybe they have lots of sheeple in the United States. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. I'm not able to quantify it, but it doesn't work for ordinary people like in the Middle East, in North Africa, in India, in Russia, in China, in Brazil, in Latin America, in Africa. Most of the world, right? You cannot fool them. Maybe some of them in the United States. And Kevork, Trump, are you kidding? I'm not promoting Trump. I'm saying I like his honesty. Why the Americans are in the Middle East? Do you have any other reason why the Americans are in the Middle East at the moment? There are some minor issues, but the main case is Israel, right? To protect Israel. And he's right. He's telling the truth. And he also told the truth why the American occupation forces are in Syria. Maybe he's lying about other things, but these two cases at least are the factually correct. During these hard times, we have the Maldives, which I personally didn't know that it's a Muslim majority country before 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago. And I learned that because every single mainstream media outlet that I have read, because I'm telling you not to read it, I do, because I just want to know what they're speaking and how much they are still BSing the people. And they, in order to try to, not to justify, but to underestimate the importance of the Maldives banning the Israeli passport holders from entering the touristic archipelago, just go to any mainstream media outlet, guys, and before the Maldives, if you're reading this news, every news outlet says the Muslim majority archipelago. Now, I never knew that it's a Muslim majority place, but because they banned the Israeli passport holders from entering the country, because they are protesting the Israeli military conduct in the Gaza Strip. Now, every single mainstream media precedes the news with the Muslim majority archipelago touristic destination, blah, 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 has banned the Israeli passport holders, da, 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 da. And I prepared a short video about this case, and I already posted it on my Twitter account, but it's really, in my opinion, it's also nice to show it to you. Take a look. Who doesn't want to spend a beautiful time this summer in the Maldives? But this tiny archipelago has made it to the political headlines this week because this tiny country has decided to ban the Israeli passport holders from entering their country, a sovereign decision of a sovereign country. But their argument is that they are protesting the Israeli military conduct in the Gaza Strip after the October 7 events, and this is their way of trying to tell Israel to stop its atrocities and the crimes against humanity that their occupation forces are committing in the Gaza Strip. But the United States thought it's a brilliant idea to come for Israel's help again. So the US lawmakers are crafting legislation aimed at stopping the Maldives from banning Israeli passport holders from entering the country. This is a scoop for Axios. So who is behind this draft legislation? Representative Josh Gottheimer. He's the one developing the legislation that would condition US aid to the Maldives on allowing Israeli passport holders into the country. And Gottheimer is one of the arch supporters of Israel in the Congress, and he is coordinating with the political colleagues on both sides of the political spectrum, Democrats and the Republicans, because, both parties are the same when it comes to Israel. But after a quick research on the internet, you will find that AIPAC itself has congratulated this Representative Josh Gottheimer on their X account, saying that this representative was endorsed by the Israel lobby in the United States, and the AIPAC says being pro-Israel is good policy and good politics. And also with a quick research, you will find that this representative has allegedly received over $1.6 million from the US lobby. So the people are asking this question: what is the nature of the relationship between the United States and Israel? Are the United States and Israel allies? Is Israel a colony of the United States? Is Israel part of the United States? Is it one of the federal states in the United States? Is there any confederalism that combines these two sides? Or the Israel lobby has hijacked the domestic and foreign policies of the United States? Those are serious questions that we need to address to understand why the United States always comes for Israel's help, although the Israeli occupation forces, and this week Ben Gvir and Netanyahu both threatened to open a wide war against Lebanon, something that the United States doesn't want, by the way. And the Americans have no interest in blowing up the region. However, the Israelis are pushing for a regional war in the region. So this raises the question: isn't Israel working against the interests of Washington in the Middle East or West Asia? So many questions raised in this video. Is Israel an ally of the United States? Is Israel a colony of the United States? Is Israel part of the federal a federal state of the United States? Is there any confederalism between them? What's the nature of the relationship between the both sides? Has Israel hijacked the domestic and foreign policies of the United States? So those are important questions, right? Isn't Israel now working against the interests of the US by trying to blow up the region with Hezbollah and Iran? Those are legitimate questions, right, for everyone who is supporting Israel in the United States. And Hussein correctly says Blinken lies to who have no access, or to those who have no access to information, and also the fake evangelical preachers propagandizing too. Yeah, those are definitely part of the people who believe the Blinken's BS about their respect for human rights, etc., etc. Now, before I end up this live streaming, I wanted to remind you that tomorrow at 12 noon time, Central European time, I will be on the Duran. It's going to be 11 a.m. London time, 1 p.m. Damascus time, and 6 a.m. Eastern American time. In the meantime, I started this live streaming, guys, with asked you to help me. And this is the website that has allegedly sent me an email telling me that they want to promote one of their VPN products on my YouTube channel. I truly kindly ask you to let me know if this is a fake or not. It's apex.com. I don't know if I should reply to this email. Many of you already said that just report as a spam. But if you know concretely what is this website about, please write a comment under this video when this live streaming is over, and I would like to get your opinion on it before I decide what to do with it. So guys, this was all for today's live stream. I tried to cover all these cases. If you like this video, please hit the like button before leaving this live streaming. It helps me a lot with the algorithm of YouTube, and more people see this content on their timeline when they log into their YouTube channel. I really appreciate it if you can do that. And if you want to support my independent work, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, or you can become a premium member on YouTube. All the links are in the description below. Until tomorrow, guys, I wish you peace. Peace be upon you, upon your families, and we will see you tomorrow. Salam.